I'm Nadege Corcoran. I'm a vegan bodybuilder. I compete in the bikini category, and I'm really passionate about veganism because I think that it is the way to thrive, not only for sport, but mentally and emotionally to keep yourself in balance. I was quite overweight and I was very unhealthy, and I'd just gotten told that I was pre-diabetic. My heart's desire to not eat meat and my health were actually connected.
So Nadege, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
No, you're really welcome. So Nadege, just for our viewers out there and our listeners, can you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Certainly. My name is Nadege, and I have a career, but on the side, I do bodybuilding, which would be considered almost another career by how much you have to involve yourself in the sport. So I've been bodybuilding now for almost 10 years. I've done multiple competitions, but most recently I competed at Mr. America with the plant-built vegan strong team. And so I was there for the first time as a pro athlete, because the previous year when I competed, I had won Mr. America Amateur, earning me a pro card basically. So this year was my first year competing as a pro.
Amazing. And how did that go for you this year?
It went well. I finished third, which is great. So in bodybuilding, having a top 3 placing is what you're after every time. So being my first time, I wasn't too sure. There's nobody that comes in a pro competition that isn't ready. So you're not looking at any, maybe some athletes that are doing it as a bucket list item. Usually when you've reached the pro ranks, you're doing it because you're really dedicated to the sport. So the competition is fierce. So being able to come with a medal was very, I was very happy about that, and adding to the vegan strong team's medal count.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I was talking to Giacomo and Danny, and I mean, you guys did incredibly well, right? You absolutely cleared up.
Oh, yes. We definitely proved that plants have all the protein that you need.
Yes. And I will not ask about the protein because we know by now. Hopefully everybody should know by now. So just a little bit about you, Nadege. I mean, how, for a novice starting out, how did you first become interested in bodybuilding?
That's interesting. I'm going to go back about 12 years now before I was vegan, because I've been vegan for 12 years. So let's go back before that. I was quite overweight and I was very unhealthy, and there was a lot of diabetes in my family. And so at that point, I was in my 20s and I'd just gotten told that I was pre-diabetic, which is pretty, to me, I thought that's normal. It's just in my family. And I almost felt cursed by it, it's just what it's going to be. But also I had a very deep love for sugar. So let's just be honest. And which was causing the overweight, obviously. So I watched Forks Over Knives, which I think is an awakening for a lot of people. But it's when I realized I wasn't a slave to my genetics. I could actually do something about what I thought I couldn't do anything about. I wasn't doomed, essentially. And when I was really, really young, I would say even as young as 4 or 5 years old, I didn't want to eat meat. It was one of those things when I connected the cow and beef and chicken and poultry. And when I started connecting the two, I thought, no, I don't want to do that. But we're talking about the 80s, nobody was going to let me be vegan.
Yep.
So essentially it didn't happen. But when I watched Forks Over Knives, I realized that my heart's desire to not eat meat and my health were actually connected, and that it wasn't going to be one of those things where I was just going to start not eating meat and maybe yo-yo diet, which I had done. I had done Weight Watchers by then and all sorts of other things where I yo-yoed quite a bit. And I realized, wait a minute, if I just do this, I can sustain that because I don't want to eat meat. And so I became a pretty fervent vegan. And eventually I added working out to the mix, because I only started with food, lost 50 pounds just with food,
Wow.
Reversed the pre-diabetes diagnosis just with food, no workouts. But eventually I thought, okay, to take this health thing to the next level, I need to be active. I need to do something. Started working out at CrossFit, loved it. Eventually kind of reached a plateau where I'm I'm deadlifting 200 pounds. I think that's enough.
Yeah, wow.
I felt
yeah.
Right? And I thought maybe that wasn't motivating anymore, because the next goal was, do 210. And it just wasn't working for me. So I went to a personal trainer to try to do a little bit more I can't say that word, but body function.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then eventually it led to me thinking, I wish this was a sport. I love it so much. I wish there was a way to compete in just lifting weights. And somebody took me to a bodybuilding show and I watched it and I thought, oh my goodness, it is a sport. You lift weights, you shape your body, you construct it, and then you showcase the effort basically. And it just led me to bodybuilding naturally from there.
That's amazing. And also how quickly you were able to turn things around as well. Just, the 50 pounds just with diet alone it's incredible, right?
Yes.
It's kind of not thought of. It's crazy how quick that went.
It's funny because people always say, I wish I could do what you do. And I always think to myself, you say that until I tell you to put the fork down.
Yeah.
And you realize that's what it takes. It's the same as if you hear like a master at piano, people will say, oh, I wish I could play like that. But are you willing to put your hands on that keyboard for as many hours as they are? And that's the problem. People want the thing, but they don't want to do the work. And I feel like food is one of those things where people are just not willing to change their habits for a really long time. Like something really major has to happen for somebody to be like, okay, I'll stop eating this thing that's causing me a heart disease, or I'll, and they'll rather take pills. Like,
Yeah.
I have stomach burns and I'm going to take pills so I can keep eating the greasy food, but that doesn't connect.
It doesn't make sense, does it? I
Right.
think you're right. It's that willingness, and you've got to be kind of disciplined to do it. If you're changing habits, it might be at first, okay, I did really great for 3 months, and then, oh my God, the sugar, it's screaming. But then, you're like, okay, let's try again, and we start again, and we do it again, right?
Yes. I had to find, I'm going to call it crutches for sugar, because it was truly a problem. Like there's a reason why I was pre-diabetic at 20. Like I could eat an entire box of donuts on my own. I loved sugar so much. I would have had it for breakfast, lunch, and supper every day. And I would eat like meals of pancakes and it was doused in maple syrup to the point where it's floating in the bowl. Like it's unreal how much sugar I was consuming, healthy or not.
Yeah.
So I had to find alternatives, and to me stevia kind of came in as like that magical plant that would just make the taste buds be okay. And so that crutch, I call it, and that's why I see when people want to transition away from meat, maybe it is to use mock meats for a while to make yourself have like that alternative on your plate that makes you think it's the same. The stevia was kind of doing that for me without giving me the sugar spikes.
Yes, that's good. Yeah, and I think you're right. It's finding a way that works, for you, or however you want to do it. Like you said, it might be mock meats, or it might be, the faux cheese, or like the vegan cheese, whatever that might be, just whatever your craving is.
That's it. Yeah, I tried to go like raw vegan, super healthy right out of the gate, and that didn't work so well for me because although fruits were really helpful, the sugar cravings kept coming back. So for a while I was having, and it lasted probably 3 months where I was vegetarian before becoming vegan, because on the weekends I'd allow the sweets. And then I thought, and then now the animal part of it was in my head thinking, I can't do this. I can't eat eggs. I can't eat dairy. I have to fix this. And that's when I leaned towards something else to kind of make that transition for me.
But even 3 months is a relatively short period of time, right? So it's, it was already taking place and those changes were happening.
That's right. I was already, the desire was already there. And I think that's the key, is make sure that that's strong enough it can carry through anything.
Amazing. So in terms of like the bodybuilding, you've kind of touched already on how many, like when you get to the stage of like Mr. America, at this point, people are serious professionals. And so placing is super important. I mean, do you know how many people apply for that and how many people get through each year? Or is it?
So the way it works is they have a cutoff for this particular competition, Mr. America. They have like, I'm going to say 15 athletes maximum in each of the pro categories, because if not, the show would drag on till the end of the night. And you do have to have a pro status to be able to go. So they have a cutoff. So once you get in and you start, then you have to take your preparation for it seriously, because like I said, you're not going to show up on a stage and like there's nothing worse than showing up and you wouldn't be ready. Like that feeling would be like a sinking feeling for me. I wouldn't be able to do it. So it does take that kind of, I think going on a stage wearing hardly anything gives you a drive that not much else can give you.
Yes. I mean, I just think about holidays and, you know, being on a beach in a bikini and it's like, okay, yeah, we're going to lose weight.
That's right. Exactly.
Oh, it happens.
That times 100.
Yes.
Yeah, it's exactly that same thought process. Like I'm going, or a wedding, if somebody's getting married, like it's the same concept. It's very driving to be able to like go to a stage like Mr. America. But I like it. I like the challenge of it. And I think that my longevity in the sport has a lot to do with the fact that I'm not looking for self-esteem, or I'm not looking for people to be like, oh, great job to you. I already have that. I had that when I was overweight. I had tons of self-confidence. I was not looking for that. But to me, it's like any sport. If you want to practice a sport, just take pride in your craft. And if you don't want to, you don't have to do it. So if you're not going to actually commit to the diet and commit to the workouts, then maybe you don't want to do it. And if you don't want to do it, then don't do it. There are other things in the world that are more important than bodybuilding competitions.
No, that's amazing. I mean, you say you kind of balance it around your job as well. How many, like for a novice, for somebody starting out, how many kind of hours a week would you, you know, do you put into this and commit to this?
Yeah, I have at least 5 workouts of lifting a week, and those are like very regimented. And I have a trainer who's Danny, actually, from Vegan Proteins. He gives me my workouts, and I make those happen in the 5 days that she's prescribed them. I'd say each of them takes 45 minutes probably to do, but they're usually pretty draining. Like that, you need to have some energy because it's a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of repetitions. It's really meant to build that muscle. Then the closer you get to a competition, the more lean you have to be. So the cardio increases. And I have this very unusual thing. It's not common in the bodybuilding world, where I love running. I absolutely love running, to the point where if I ran as much as I want, I probably would lose all my muscle because I love running that much. So for me, that part is the easiest. And that adds a lot of hours, upwards of another hour, hour and a half of potentially cardio that day. If I can do it while running, I'm very content. But if I can't run, if I have to do, for any reason, like I'm somewhere where there's not a treadmill, or I can't go off on the roads to run, I struggle to make that happen because I don't like any other method of cardio.
Interesting. Yeah, I hate running, but I walk for like 3 hours a day. So it's like 18,000 steps, which is, I feel is fine. And it's up and down hills because it's Bristol. So I'm like, that's okay.
Yeah, that's amazing. Walking is a very common bodybuilding practice. Like
really?
Walking uphill especially. Yes, because it's such a gentle workout on your muscles aren't going to be suffering from it so much. So, but I think once you start running, eventually your muscles don't suffer either.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we've never got that far. So, I mean, so you've been doing this for 12 years now. And I mean, the longevity in that alone, I mean, has there ever been times where it's just taken it out of your body, or have you ever had any injuries or anything like that?
So I've never had an injury from lifting or anything like that. I've had injuries, like I had a concussion. It's not from bodybuilding. I had a concussion from stupidity. I ducked under my barbell, which was fully loaded, and I lifted my head so fast that my head hit my knee. So it was an injury, and it took me out of the game for a significant amount of time because I couldn't lift. I had no, I would feel like throwing up. It was a really bad concussion. So that was the one injury I can recall, but it's not really because of bodybuilding. It's really because of rushing and not taking my time to check what I was doing. So I've never had an injury because one of the trainers that I follow for running, he had said at one point, and I think this is the best quote, always stuck in my head. He said, injuries will whisper before they scream. Mm-hmm. And so if you pay attention to the little parts of your body that are saying, this isn't feeling good right now, like this isn't you, don't keep pushing, like this isn't right, stop for a minute. And I think if you do that, you're not going to get hurt usually because you're going to actually hear the whisper. Because it's true, if you think about it, something starts annoying you, well before you get injured about it.
That's very true, actually. And I mean, do you think that you kind of listening to your body more as a result of the kind of bodybuilding and the exercise and everything that you're doing? Whereas if perhaps you weren't, you wouldn't really pay the same attention to that?
I agree 100%. I think that's right. And I also think that being vegan did that. I feel like I was living in dissonance before eating as a vegan because I didn't want to eat the pain and the suffering. I knew I was doing it and I could feel it and it was weighing me down. And when I started eating life instead by eating plants, I started feeling so much better that I think it created like this very, very deep awareness of my body. Where now if I eat even something that just isn't correct, like if it's like loaded with chemicals, vegan, but loaded with chemicals, I feel it. Like I feel it emotionally, I feel it physically. So I think that awareness translates really well into sports.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes sense. I know what you mean as well. It's like, for me, it's like I feel the salt in things that aren't, like when I cook, I use like a sprinkle, but when it's like junk food or greasy food or, you know, even if it's like cauliflower wings or, you know, it's that salt for me. It's like, horrible.
That's right. So if you take that awareness and you translate it into like being aware of your body when you work out the same way, it's a little bit more mechanical than it is like digestive system, but it's still the same listening.
Amazing. And so it's not just bodybuilding as well that you do. You also compete in bikini competitions. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the category of bodybuilding that I'm in.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, bikini is like the smallest version of women bodybuilding. So you have all sorts of categories. It goes bikini, wellness, figure, and then you have the bodybuilders after that, or physique, and then bodybuilders. So the size is increasingly bigger as you go, and then the leanness level is also increasingly leaner.
God, so there's quite a lot of categories. Do you ever think you'd like change categories, or do you have that desire, or?
So I started in figure, which is like really 2 categories above from the category I'm on right now. And I got lean enough. I don't have that much muscle on my frame, like naturally. And I think that there is a genetic limit of how much muscle a person can build. And so if you're going to be a natural athlete, there's a line that you can't really cross. So I was okay in figure. I do not have the legs to do wellness because they're very developed on the lower half of the body. And then bikini, when I tried it, it was a little bit more effortless, but not just in the muscle mass, but also in the posing. So now it creates a place where I can just work on muscle density rather than like growth all the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. And can you just tell us a little bit as well how you kind of became involved with Vegan Strong and went on to meet, you know, Danny and everybody?
Yeah, so when I became vegan and then I started adding workouts, I was obviously looking online for people that did what I did so I could look for, and that was a little bit we're talking 10 years ago. Social media wasn't what it is today. I'm dating myself. But I started looking for people that did what I did, and I was able to find some. And I remember finding Robert Sheik and his books, and he had tons of really nice books. And then eventually found my way to Vegan Proteins with Danny and Giacomo Muscle by Brussels podcast, all of that. And I was blessed to eventually meet them in person on a cruise ship. Oh, wow. We'd been following each other for a really, really long time. There was a vegan cruise that we went on, and they were there, and I was able to meet them. And so after that, my coach back then, I was bodybuilding with a different coach, wasn't vegan, and it was starting to get really difficult because the creativity, he always thought, well, are you sure you don't want to eat eggs? Are you sure you don't want to eat fish? I'm very sure.
Mm-hmm. So, thank you.
You know, and there wasn't that many vegan bodybuilders at that point either. And there was a few, but I could see them. They were doing it. So I thought, I don't have to do this. I can see them. They're doing it. That's when I became, Danny started coaching me. So we became really close. Eventually, we became really good friends. And then came Plant Built, which the Vegan Strong team. And Plant Built team had been started quite a few years before that. I was following all of the athletes that were on that team. And then it came back after the pandemic for the first year they took a little bit of a break. And they asked me if I wanted to go to compete in bikini. And it's like a draft almost. They pick people that can create a strong team is essentially the idea. So I felt very honored. I wasn't supposed to compete that year. And I said, you know what? This is new. This is different. I'm going to go this year again, and I'm going to compete one more year. And then when I went, I won the title of Miss America Amateur, which was really cool.
Amazing.
Because the medal came back to Canada.
Yes, amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And so, yeah, then once you're in the team, you're in the team forever. So I was able to compete again this year.
Amazing. That's brilliant. And it's going from strength to strength, isn't it? I mean, like, you know, as we talked about at the start, the team did just so well, and there were loads of golds and silvers, bronze, and it's amazing. And it's showing, leading by example as well, right? It's, look, you can be vegan, and look how well we've done. And that's all, you know, you don't have to say anything else. You've shown everybody.
That's it. I'm one of those people. I find that there's people, I really, really deeply believe, I wish I had a magic wand and I could just make the whole world vegan today. I feel like the suffering would end for so many beings. I can't do that. But also I see the people that are really strong advocates, and they, like Joey Carbstrong, for example, goes out and he does all these. I can't do that. Like, it's just not in my DNA. Like, I don't have that personality to do what he does. I admire it and I think the world needs it. But also there's people that maybe instead of hearing it, they need to see it. Yeah. And so that's what I really liked about the team, is it allows us to just show it. We don't have to say anything. We're wearing the shirt that says very clearly that we're vegan, and we're cleaning house. Now you can conclude from that what you wish. You can ask us any question you want. But that way it's people can come to us rather than us trying to push anything to them, because some people's personality, that just works better. So we're tackling veganism from several angles.
It's great. And there's a space, like you say, for everybody. Certain people are going to respond to Joey. Other people are going to get their backs up by Joey. And then other people, it's like the soft touch, you know, it's
That's
like,
right.
Oh, you've got loads of energy, you know, but you're a vegan. And it's like,
That's right.
You know, it's like, oh yeah, the wheels are turning, you know, or you don't.
That's it.
Yeah. It just depends, I guess.
I really enjoyed this type of, I call it advocacy, because it's more about kind of showcasing that you don't have to live a subpar life. If you think that we're not thriving, you're wrong. We are. There's no other way to say it. I go to the physician every year just because that was a practice I had since I had prediabetes. I do blood work every year. And when I get my blood work, since I've been vegan, and sometimes I've changed physician, they're like, oh, you're going to be low on this and low on that and low on this. And then I do my blood work and like, oh my goodness, picture of health. Really? You don't say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's the same here. I mean, I can't retain B12, but I didn't find that out until I was 26, and I was vegetarian at that point, I think. Or I'd been vegan briefly, but then I went back to vegetarian because they were like, oh, you know, B12. And then the last time I got it checked, it's like, oh, your levels are good. Like, not good, but they'll never be great, but they're up there. And it's like, right. Yeah, I'm vegan. And I've been vegan for several years. And they're like, oh, okay. And it's the shock, right. Isn't it? I mean, I take supplements, obviously, but yeah.
So should everybody, really. Yeah. Our food sources are not what they were. So you probably should consider.
And they never tell you in meat, do they? They never say, oh, actually, you're going to get, say, 16% of B12 from this portion of meat that you're eating. There's never anything like that. So is it a myth?
Yeah.
Is it even in there? It's byproduct of feed.
Well, it's probably injected.
Maybe, yeah. Well,
there's a lot in there that's been added. So the same as people that say you shouldn't eat soy. Well, your beef is eating all the soy, just so you know.
Yes. They love that argument. Oh, you eat this percentage. You're like, no, it's 80% animal feed. Thank you. And
that's right. Yeah. But I find it interesting. We have a really rare illness in our family that's genetic on my mother's side called hemochromatosis, which is like an overage of iron, like a non-ability to process iron in the blood. And I'm a carrier, which I just found out because of the blood work, which means that theoretically I should not eat iron. Oh. And then I talked to the doctor, talked to specialists, and figured out can't eat iron. There's two types. There's Heme iron and non-Heme iron. I eat non-Heme iron, which means not from blood. So it's not from an animal source. It's like spinach. Yeah. I eat so much spinach, but I have zero problem with processing iron. So I don't know. I think there's something to it.
I think there's probably definitely something in that. It's again, it's right there. Yeah. And there will be studies on that. And
On the
whether
opposite, probably trying to prove the
course,
opposite,
of
just
course.
because if you want to study on X and B, you can find both. They always all exist.
Except the ones that are kind of on that one will be funded and pushed into the mainstream.
That's right.
Classic.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I
But
mean,
yeah, it's never caused me any problems from a bodybuilding standpoint or to be an athlete, to be able to get my iron, get my B12s and get all my supplements, and definitely not my protein, because all the muscle I have has been built as a vegan, because I never lifted a weight before I was vegan.
That's incredible. So, I mean, what have you got over the next kind of 12 months, Nadege? Have you got a lot coming up? Are you going to be training still and looking to compete again?
Yeah, so there's an association in Canada that's a very popular association called the IFBB, and it's not necessarily natural athletes and definitely not vegan athletes, but it's very accessible to me because that's what is here locally. So I'm competing in a competition in April. This one is really cool because it's by invite only. They only invite the top athletes of the eastern part of Canada to participate, and it's by invite only. I received an invitation, which I'm really grateful for. So I'm going to do my best to show the same thing, but this time not with the team, just by myself. And we're not sure if the team is competing next year or not, or in 2024. I say next year, but that's now.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yes, it is.
Yeah, so I have a few competitions in the spring for sure, as an individual, not as the team, and then we'll see from there.
That's amazing. And just to kind of summarize as well, I mean, for somebody who's like looking to maybe get into bodybuilding or even veganism, you know, what would your kind of advice to them be?
So I think the first thing for especially a female that wants to get into bodybuilding, I say this to everybody: don't do it to find self-esteem. Find self-esteem first and then do it. That's how you're going to be able to last, because it is a competition where people are judging your physical body. And so it can be hard on the self-esteem if you don't have that already. So I always say, people that want to do it usually do it because they see the beautiful pictures of the beautiful bikinis and how pretty it looks. They don't realize the impact it might have on them to step on stage if they're not mentally prepared for that. So that's one thing. Get yourself mentally prepared. Second thing, always do it with a coach. It's not like saying I'm going to go run a 5-kilometer race. Like, you can't just pick up and go and do it. You actually have to have coaching because there's specific criterias in the sport of what they're looking for. And you have to just make sure everything's polished and ready for the category that you're in. And then for veganism, I always say I'm a rip the Band-Aid person. I just took the jump and I just did it. But if it has to be gradual, that's better than nothing. Like, maybe you're a 50% type of person. Try it. Try to do one day without meat or 2 days without meat, and you'll see that you'll probably feel really, really good from it.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for chatting to me today.
Perfect. It was great chatting with you. Thank you so much for having me.